Good morning, viewers. Welcome to another special episode of Safe Distance and Save Lives, our Saturday special. Saturday is a very important day in our lives. It's that day when all the family comes together. Of course, we all work, I know, but most of us try to meet our family, our friends, and we discuss so many important things that matters to us. Today, I'm delighted to have Fauzia Murtaza, who is here with a electrifying panel. Please mark my words, electrifying, that's right. These people enlighten lives. Mental health matters, and it matters more than ever today because we are coming out of COVID. At least I can try to say that. I know it's here, a new world, and these people are making a difference. Mental Health Matters with Fauzia Murtaza. I'm very delighted to have Fauzia Murtaza, who is a stress prevention strategist, and she will be conducting today's panel discussion. Without taking further, let's move into the panel discussion, learn, share, because that's what we do in Safe Distance and Save Lives.
Hi, thank you, Malika, for that great introduction. And you're absolutely right. We have an electrifying panel today. First of all, I just want to start and say hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Fazia Murtaza. And for today's discussion, we'll be exploring alternative resources and tools to aid in the management and of our mental health and self-care during the COVID-19 pandemic. I think that we're in trying times right now, and there's a lot of worry, stress, and anxiety around the uncertainty of the situation. So we thought it would be good to talk about what we can do during this time. As I mentioned, I'm really excited to hear from our panelists today, each a rightful expert in their field. First, we have Tanyaella Conlin. Tanya is a community mental health worker, peer support specialist, and college professor. Tanya has nearly 20 years of experience working in various areas of community mental health. For nearly 14 years, she's worked in the violence against women sector, working with women in shelter at rape crisis centers through the family law process. She developed a number of training resources and offered support and training to other peers in the sector across the province. In 2014, she joined the team at Durham Mental Health Services and has been working primarily in the crisis and peer programs since. Tanya is a certified RAP, mental health and wellness recovery, and safe management group facilitator and co-facilitates many groups. Tanya is a passionate advocate for the people she works with, and she is dedicated to upholding the values and principles that Durham Mental Health Services holds so dear. Welcome, Tanya.
Thank you, Fazia.
Next, we have Suzan Hart. Suzan is a mindset mastery mentor, an author, inspirational speaker, and trainer. Suzan has a background in psychology and over 15 years experience in family, individual, and group counseling. She helps leaders develop breakthrough strategies that reset their thinking. She operates at the intersection of personal leadership, inclusive communication, and cultural competency. Her five-step system allows leaders to overcome fear, doubt, and indecision, and powerfully respond when faced with a challenge. If you are tired of becoming paralyzed when confronted with the unknown of change, crisis, and chaos, it's time to learn the secret to unlocking the drive, passion, and focus needed to create massive results. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Fazia.
And third, we have Joseph Pitawankwat. Joseph is a holistic health educator who specializes in plant-based medicine. Joseph is an Ojibwe from Wikkiwemkoong. He is the founder and director of Creator's Garden, an Indigenous outdoor education and now online education-based business. His focus is on plant identification, sustainable harvesting, and teaching every one of their linguistic, historical, cultural, edible, ecological, and medicinal significances through experiences. Joseph has developed a curriculum which he continuously lectures to a variety of organizations, including over 100 First Nations communities, 20 universities and colleges across Canada and the United States. He is a master's student in the MES program. He has learned from hundreds of traditional knowledge holders and uniquely blends that knowledge with an array of Western sciences. He is also working on his upcoming book, which focuses on ancient interpretive techniques called The Doctrine of Signatures. Welcome, Joseph.
All right, thank you.
Thank you each for being here with us today. So let's get started. According to a poll earlier this year by the Canadian Mental Health Association, 69% of Ontarians believe the province is headed for a serious mental health crisis as it emerges from this pandemic, and 77% say more mental health supports will be necessary to help society. To help us understand the impact this pandemic has on the well-being of individuals and their families, we've invited Suzan, Tanya, and Joseph to share with us. So I want to pose a question to each of you as you each work within a different field. How has social distancing impacted mental health for people? And we can start with Suzan.
That's a great question. And I think one of the things that we want to look at in our society today is that we are a very busy, interactive society. And with that comes not much time to be with self, to be by yourself, and also to be with loved ones. So what we're facing, one is, I think, two things. A lot of people not being accustomed to being left with themselves. And when we are not accustomed to being with themselves, we're not accustomed to being left with our thoughts. We're not accustomed to being left with our fears. We're not accustomed to being left with our emotions. And we're not accustomed to not being distracted by other people and other things. So I think for a lot of people, it's almost like I have too much time in my head by myself thinking of things, and I don't actually know how to manage my own thoughts. So I think there's that piece. I think the other part that we're seeing people face is, social distancing for many people feels like social isolation, right? And we also have families that have been so busy, like two ships that are passing in the night, that suddenly we have people that aren't actually accustomed to being in relatedness, in the same place for extended periods of time, and not actually, and I think realizing that they don't actually have a relationship. And so we're seeing increases in domestic violence. We're seeing increases in people, the divorce rates, separations, and then we're seeing increase with mental health, because I think what we're also seeing is emotions that have been suppressed, emotions that we've been too busy to deal with, emotions, things that we've been too busy to think about. Now people have to wait a lot of time with themselves and not able to actually manage a lot of the stuff that's happening. I think the last part is fear. There's a lot of fear, and people, we aren't accustomed to dealing with fear, which is a lot of what we do.
Wow, that's a great perspective. Thank you for sharing that. And you make a great point. I think a lot of people are so caught up in the old norm that they're not aware of all of these things that they're experiencing and going through. So that probably has an impact as well. I want to give it over to Tanya, because I think that a lot of what Suzan said overlaps in probably what you're seeing with your clients as well.
I'm going to answer that question by going back in time a little bit, to a million years ago in March. And what happened to our clients is that they were going to groups, they were accessing services, they were accessing support, and then one day it all shut off. It was all taken away. There wasn't a transition, there wasn't a warning, it just all stopped. And for many of the people that I work with, isolation is a very, very big problem already. A lot of them don't have a lot of family support. They may not have a lot of community support. There's so much stigma attached to mental health already that people really do rely on professional supports and their peer connections within those professional supports. And to have all of that taken away so suddenly was very much like having the proverbial rug pulled out from underneath people. And what I found was people who had no access to their supports actually coping very well in the circumstances, but not able to see that they were coping very well in the circumstances. Is people that I work with tend to be very, very hard on themselves. So if they struggle to cope, it isn't an indicator that living under quarantine and with the uncertainty of COVID is hard. It is the conclusion that's often reached is that they aren't good at wellness. They aren't good at coping. And that's simply not the case. So from my perspective in my work, I've been able to see people really rise. We transformed our services very quickly onto an online format, which is not the same. But we are now into month 6, and I think that part of the mental health impact is that continued isolation continues. The Zoom and the FaceTimes and all of those things that are taking place are great, but they're not the same. They don't necessarily get people out of the house, get people moving. And I think that we are now in a place where we have been doing this a really long time, and we don't know what's going to happen. We're expecting this next wave of COVID. We're expecting flu season. And so, okay, we're allowed out of our houses today, but are we going to be locked back up again tomorrow? And I think that that means I think a lot of people are hesitant to return back to previous patterns, lifestyles, and even if they wanted to return back to their previous supports, a lot of places still aren't offering in-person support. So it's really is challenging to get your needs met at this time. And so what I've been seeing, and I think this is, if I could just put a hopeful spin on it, is people who are really resourceful and doing what they can to get those needs met. I really enjoy the work that I do because I enjoy the people that I work with, and I admire them and I respect them. And the last 6 months have really given me so many more reasons to have that respect and to have that admiration. So on the one hand, it's been extraordinary. But on the other hand, I think people are doing the best that they can, and they deserve a lot of credit for that. But I also think that we're all suffering a collective post-traumatic stress, right? That this has all been, you can't stay in a heightened state of hypervigilance for 6 months and think that that's not going to have an impact long term.
Yeah, absolutely. So much truth to what you said, Tanya. And I can see Joseph, he really has something that he'd like to add to that. So let's just give it over to Joseph. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, no, that's you guys are awesome. Holy man. Yeah, that's exactly what's up. Everything's pretty crazy. The only thing that I kind of would really like to say is one of the really amazing things that I've been able to see, because yeah, like before I would travel to the community, take a whole bunch of families outside, and we'd go and find all the plant medicine that we could find, and yeah, make all kinds of different medicines. So we have a pretty we were always doing the same thing, and then yeah, March happens, and immediately everything has to be online. And like, I didn't even Skype with my parents before all this. Now my whole business has to be online. That was crazy. But we started, and I got to be working like in everybody's home now. So it was actually like a really, really good thing. One of my favorite, most important things that I have to establish and accomplish early on is ensuring that the participants are connecting to creation, they're connecting to the land, and then developing a relationship with it. Because we go out and we pick medicine, right? So, well, this side, I guess. We go out and we pick medicine, and you need to be in a reciprocal relationship with each and every one of those plants. So that plant has gifts to give you, and you have to give gifts back to it. Mainly by way of, seed collection and distribution and helping with that whole cycle of reproduction. And so you're engaging in a relationship with all of these medicines. That's a real good way to connect somebody with something. So one of the coolest things that I saw in all of our online engagements is families going out together and establishing those relationships and those connections, and receiving the gifts that those plants have to give them regarding their physical health, but also just the fact that connection and those relationships were beginning and they were being fostered. There was significant impacts on their mental health, their family's mental health. And so for me as a teacher, it ended up being one of the most beautiful things to see, and then to endorse and to motivate in all of our listeners. And so one of the things I got everybody to do is to make a medicine map. Because one of the things that COVID did and is still doing is it like forced everyone outside. Everyone was outside. It was crazy. Well, maybe not everybody, but there was a lot more people outside. And so while we are outside, they created a medicine map of all of the medicine that they could find, all of the medicine that I have taught them about, and they created a map. And they're all now it's fall time, it's harvest time, and they're all engaging with it, and they're being fulfilled as a part of that process. And then it ended up having, a very positive impact on their mental health. And so we were big proponents of connecting to any green spaces, any landmass, the creation around you, and observing the benefit in that.
Oh, thank you for that. I love that perspective of receiving, but also giving back. And I think that's so necessary. I like how you each touched a little bit on the sort of being thrust into this situation. We've had to reevaluate, and we've had to really look at how we're spending our time and how we can utilize the time that we've given, because right now that's all we all have is extra time that we thought we didn't have. So that takes me to my next question on how we would spend that time. How important is it that you find when you're working with your clients, how important is it to create daily routines? Anyone who wants to go first?
I can say something on that.
Sure.
I think what's really important is that we not put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be high achievers in this time, right? Because I think that feeds into that notion of, well, I haven't learned a new language, and I haven't started playing guitar, and I haven't taken up woodworking, so I must be failing at COVID. I'm not baking bread every day. I must be failing at COVID. So while I think daily routine is super important, we know that is a big part of wellness. It's what we teach in RAP. Fozzie and I actually have the opportunity to teach RAP together. It's a huge part of wellness, but I think that when we talk about this, we want to make sure that we're talking about daily routine and wellness, and not necessarily this idea that we have to suddenly become masters of this new talent that we've never attempted before. Because there are a lot of people who really have said, like, all I'm doing is what I need to do day in and day out, and I'm not doing what all these people are doing, as though they're failing at wellness. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, that's what I'm doing too. Right? Because I think that however we make it through the day is how we make it through the day. And we don't need to become, we don't need to learn Latin to make it through COVID successfully. But I think that daily routine is so important. I know that for myself, personally, I became the worst COVID snacker between March and probably yesterday. Where it's like, in March and April, I was buying potato chips at the store. I don't do that. I'll eat them if someone else has them, but I don't buy those. So I think that when we don't have healthy daily maintenance plans, what we end up doing is resorting to unhealthy coping strategies, in my case, potato chips. And we can get to a point where we're not getting dressed every day, or we're getting dressed, but we're actually just changing from one set of pajamas to another set of pajamas. And it's so easy to get out of the routine of leaving your house, or brushing your hair, or having any sort of connection to anyone. So I think that one of the things that we teach in RAP is that when we start seeing signs that our wellness is in decline, the first thing we always talk about with our early warning signs that things are breaking down, signs that we're entering a crisis, well, the first thing we always tell people is go back to your daily maintenance plan and look at what you're not doing, right? Because when we flip our days and nights so that we're staying up all night doing really unproductive things like watching Netflix, and we're sleeping all day, or we're up too late and we're still getting up, or we're trying to balance working from home and having children at home learning. The degree of anxiety and panic that increased when the government released the curriculum in April, wow, that really shot up. But I think daily maintenance is absolutely critical. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to put pressure on ourselves to be achievers in this time. But I think that we can find new ways of connecting and new ways of adapting to this new reality of life that can be really positive. But we just have to walk that fine line, I think.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. We do have to find that fine line. I know Suzanne has something to add to this because I've worked with you, Suzanne, and I know that daily routines for you are a ritual. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Absolutely. I think one of the things I want to start with is, as we're talking about mental health, I think we're talking about mental health for everyone. Right. And so for anyone listening, I don't want someone to exclude themselves from this conversation because they think, well, I don't have a mental health issue. Mental health is the looking at how we are all coping with change, stress, all those different things. So I think that as COVID is evolving, it's challenging everyone's mental health, because whenever we are faced with change, and particularly change that we didn't choose, it challenges our sense of self, it challenges our mental health, it challenges our coping mechanisms, and it challenges what we routinely do. And for those who don't have routines, it often creates a lot more chaos in your life. For me, one of the key things about rituals and routines is rituals and routines, for me, I often refer to it as home base, right? It's home base, and whatever it is for you. Anyone who works with me, I recommend they have a morning routine and a routine to close off their day, and they actually build a schedule that schedules what they want to do out of the day, in the day. And that's home base. And why home base is so key at this time, as Tanya says, is when you move away from it, you know you're gone. Whereas if you don't have it, you tend to drift and you don't actually know what you're supposed to come back to. So the beautiful thing about having a ritual and routine is it gives you this grounding foundation. So when emotions rise, when things seem challenging and chaotic, it becomes your home base where you can go back and say, this is what grounds me. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing that's really cool about this whole process is, I have the two bookends, morning routine, evening routine, but in the middle of that, I tell people 3 goals, just 3. And they don't have to be rocket science. They could be, I'm going to go for a walk today. I'm going to get this project done today. I'm going to get something else done today. And what it does is it gives us focus, but it also gives us a sense of success, right? I mean, for me, even if it is, I made my bed, right? I went for a long walk. Our mind loves success. And a mind that is trained to celebrate success will go looking for success. So another part of having a ritual and routine is actually teaching yourself to, one, create opportunities for success, create opportunities to celebrate your success, and then move from that place into the next day. And what that does for people is when we're in situations where days can flow into weeks and weeks can flow into months, and you're blinking your eyes going, what happened? Like it was Monday and now it's Sunday. What happened in between? It gives us opportunities to create natural breaks. There's a natural break with the beginning of the day and the end of the day. The problem is when we're home and in isolation and all these different things, those natural breaks aren't as evident because we're not going out to work and coming home. So ritual and routine also highlights those natural breaks and allows you to create your own successes and your own focus throughout the day.
I love that. Such a great way to look at it. And I hear what both of you are saying. It's even in a time of such uncertainty and chaos, having routines set up for us ourselves gives us that sense of being in control somewhat of in a situation that obviously is out of our control. I want to switch it over to Joseph, but I'm going to ask you a question, Joseph, based on what Suzanne said. And this brings it to, managing our mental health as a daily, not just if someone is experiencing mental illness. So what roles do you find, Joseph, that Indigenous remedies play in aiding and managing our mental health on a daily basis?
Thanks for watching us, and we will be back next week, same time, with part 2 of this episode.